The regulators dump the first load of synthetic murder into my system. It roars through my body like a whip crack of berserker rage. My nerves become a webwork of burning, searing pain, and my vision narrows into a tunnel focused on the target of impending violence. My muscles coil up, ready to snap and begin inflicting damage. The Exclusion Zone, a Norcom Union story by Nicholas K. Part 3. I heave a frustrated sigh and squat down on my heels beside the scavver. He shivers violently in the freezing, choking air. His skin is rapidly turning the color of concrete. He works his jaw, and another wave of shivering racks his body. Getting cold, I ask? He ignores me, choosing instead to awkwardly bring his knees up to his chest. His arms are pinned behind him, elevating his back off the rooftop, but the cold must be getting to them as he rocks side to side, lifting one arm off the roof, holding for a second, then switching arms. Been a lot of refugees from the waste this year, I say. He stops his strange little dance and watches me silently with a look of suspicion spreading over his face. And? He asks. The grandfather, by his harmony and in his wisdom, has granted more refugee passes than almost any time in the past 10 years or so, I say. So? He asks, the suspicion in his voice growing thicker. Wouldn't take much to add one more to the list, you know, I say. A quizzical look draws his eyebrows together as he watches me. What are you saying, Norcapper? He asks. I'm making you an offer, Scavver, I say. Help me out. Help me put this case to bed, find a few missing citizens, and I put you at the front of the line to get papers. I nod as I say it, looking him in the eye through my respirator, trying to get him to nod along. I can get you into the city as a conditional resident on a refugee pass. You get a work unit assignment, 3 hots and a cot, a daily hot water allotment. Meds. I pause to give it a chance to sink in before adding, come on, Scavver, it's a hell of a deal. First, he begins to nod along, but his nod abruptly changes to a shake of the head. You're lying, Norcapper. Your kind don't help my kind, he says, contempt etched into his face. All your kind knows is killing. Is that so, Scavver? Maybe we ought to go ask your guests what they think about that, I say, gesturing with a look down toward the guts of the building. He hawks up a fat green and red glob of nastiness and spits. The wind catches it and carries it over the side of the building. It splats loudly somewhere down below. I shake my head, take a deep breath, and try again. I'm trying to help you. The only thing I care about is going home. I've been crawling the wastes for weeks looking for you people. Now I've got one of you. You have the power to give me what I want. You do that, and I'll make sure you get what's coming to you. Make it hard on me, and we can go as far as we have to, I say, still nodding, still locking eyes with him. His eyes lose focus and drop to the point of his nose like he's thinking. His expression softens somewhat, and his head starts bobbing up and down. I lean down and lock eyes with him again. Help the Union, I say, pulling out my multi-tool and flipping open the blade. And the Union will help you. His eyes grow round and wide. His eyebrows hike up his forehead. What are you doing, Norcapper? He cries, trying to scoot away from me. I grab him by the arm and force him onto his stomach. I put a knee into the small of his back, pinning him to the rooftop, and he bucks against my weight, trying to force me off of him. Hey, get off me, he cries. I wrap both of his wrists up in my left hand and squeeze them together, loosening the zip ties binding his wrists together. With a single, precise flip of the blade, the thick black zip ties fall to the cracked tar of the roof. I hop back and he rolls over and scrambles into a seated position. His mouth is slack, his eyes are round, and his eyebrows are furrowed. He looks at his unbound wrists, then up at me. You cut 'em off, is all he manages to get out. He rubs his wrists where the zip ties had started, rubbing them raw, and watches me. I'm a man of my word, I say. You're halfway there. Keep going. I produce 2 cigarettes from a pocket, lift my visor, and pop them in my mouth. He stares at me, mouth hanging open. What, is it the scars, I ask, making a circular motion around my mouth with the unlit mini pocket torch produced from the same pocket. Yeah, how'd you get so furked up, he asks. I light the smokes with my torch before taking one of the menthol-flavored pre-rolls and sticking it in his mouth. Let's just say you scavvers keep me busy. He shrugs and takes a long drag and lets it out slowly, then nods. He lowers his eyes to the rooftop, looking around as if he'd just been hit by a frying pan and is now trying to remember where he is. Yeah, you said you're looking for some of your people, he stammers out slowly. I did, I reply. Let me see him, he says softly, holding out a hand. I unfurl my phone from its housing under my forearm again and open Snapsec. These ones, I say, around my cigarette, detaching the phone and turning it around to show him. The image depicts a couple, mid-20s to early 30s, typical Norcappers with black hair, black eyes, and pale skin. I flip through several photos of first the man, then the woman. He pauses, looking from the pictures to me, then back again. He chews on the butt of his cigarette. Then, after a minute that feels like an hour, nods again. Yeah, I know 'em. Failed the tests, he says. Where are they? I ask. Down stars, dreaming with the udders, he says after a pause and a resigned sigh. Okay, I say, nodding along with him. Last question. Where'd your friends go? His lips lock shut again, and his expression turns flat as slate. Several minutes pass. Hope fades that he's just mulling it over. It's plain as day that he's made a decision. Rust and ruin, not this again, I say. I cut your hands free. What else do I need to do? I pace back and forth, watching him and searching fruitlessly for the magic words that will get this fuck to just spill it. But his expression doesn't change. Look, Scaver, either you tell me and I make this easier on all you fucks, or I call in PubSec to come and finish the job and I go home in shame and they cut my social credit. Make it easier on all of us. Just tell me. They're boned either way, but you can still save yourself, I say, the end of my rope in sight. He flinches at the mention of PubSec, but goes on ignoring me, sucking on the cigarette and wrapping his knees up with his arms. Just tell me where they went. Tell me, and I'll send you on your way with coordinates to a checkpoint and a recommendation for expedited processing, I say, slapping the back of one hand into the palm of the other, helpless to keep the exasperation from my voice. Help me out. Serve the Union, and the Union will serve you. He turns his head away, but keeps watching me out of the corner of his eye. All right, still don't believe me? I say. I kneel down beside him and cut the zip ties from his ankles. He kicks at the rooftop, scrambling backward away from me, eyes fixed on my knife. I close the blade and pocket it. There, I kept my promise. Now tell me, I say, voice flat, patience exhausted. He continues to kick at the roof, pushing himself further and further away from me. Fear plasters his face, but slowly his expression hardens. His lips curl down into a sneer, his nostrils flare, and his eyes widen. Firk your Union, Norcap rot swine, he shouts at me. Firk your service, firk your ash-blighted grandfather, and most of all, firk you. He spits out the cigarette and glares at me, seething and sucking in mouthfuls of air as he rises slowly to his feet. He reveals a length of metal debris held reverse hammer grip like a knife. He must have picked it up while I was distracted. Now the cunt wants to dance. I was already getting close to the end of this rope with this motherfucker. With this, the end of my rope vanishes somewhere behind me. Made your mind up, have you? I ask. Well, let's just see how far that resolve gets you. And I growl through my respirator. The aggression regulators whir to life. They spin up, and my veins fill with precursor again. The pressure makes my skin feel like a wetsuit 2 sizes too small. My eyes feel like they're gonna pop out of my head. Then comes the rush. The regulators dump the first load of synthetic hormones into my system. It roars through my body like a whip crack of berserker rage. My nerves become a webwork of burning, searing pain, and my vision narrows into a tunnel focused on the target of impending violence. My muscles coil up, ready to snap and begin inflicting damage. He sinks into an attack stance and lunges at me, stabbing wildly at my neck with the makeshift knife. He drives me back several steps, but the cold has sapped his coordination. Despite that, he's like a snake coiling up, striking out, then coiling up for the next attack. I raise my arms in front of me, and the impact plate on the back of my right forearm takes the hit. The tip of the improvised weapon sticks like a spike into the carbon fiber and Kevlar weave. He yanks the tip out and thrusts the knife at me again, leaning forward and putting all his weight behind the thrust. I turn to the side, grasping the jagged piece of broken metal in both hands, and wrench it from him. The thick padding on my gloves protects my hands from serrations along the broken metal's edges, but the thick leather of the palms gets ripped up. He stumbles a few steps but whirls around and lunges at me again, bare hands reaching for the knife. I throw a left jab, like a piston in an engine, that catches him in the jaw, and I swing the blade down right-handed in an underhand arc that slams the thing home straight into his thigh. He screams and stumbles back. I throw a side kick into his stomach. He doubles over, but instead of going down, he dives into me, pulling me to my knees and throwing jab after jab into my ribs. My coat takes the edge off his hits, but the sudden ferocity of the attack catches me off guard, and I'm forced backward. My knees bend back, my heels dig into my ass. He presses the attack, ripping the knife from his leg and digging his toes into the cracked roof, trying to force me down onto my back. I push back, grabbing his face and trying to dig my fingers into his eye sockets, forcing myself closer and closer to being upright and able to fight back. He raises the bloody knife above his head and attempts to drive it down into my collarbone. I twist my upper body and push his hands to the side with my forearms to redirect his force. The knife scrapes my respirator's filter canister and he jams the thing into the rooftop. Before he has a chance to pull it free, I spin around so I'm above him. I bring my elbow down on the back of his head again and again until he lets go of the knife and begins to lose his balance. I finish twisting until he's face down on the roof. Then I bring my left leg up and mount him like a horse. I throw a couple of jabs into his cracked ribs. He wails in pain, gasping for air. "I'll give you one thing. You wastelanders are tough motherfuckers," I say, panting. Still straddling him, I grab his shoulder and force him onto his back. Then I throw another right hook into the deep purple bruise on his ribs. The bone cracks like a gunshot and he screams. I pop him in the mouth with a left jab. He sucks on a split lip, clenching his eyes shut and moaning. I stick my hands under his arms and pull him up to his feet. His moans deepen and he swoons in my arms. I set him down on the ground beside the parapet, hoist his ankles up, and throw on a few fresh sets of zip ties. "I'll tarlock, big brother, please," he cries. "I'm sorry, big brother." My wrist vibrates. I glance at my phone's mini preview screen where a travel pass warning flashes yellow and red. Only a couple hours left before I'm due back at the wall. "Oh no, little brother, oh no, 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 that time has passed," I mutter through clenched teeth and dismiss the message. "I tried being nice, tried to help you, tried to avoid all this, but you scavvers, you plague-riddled sons of the waste, never fucking learn." I seethe, damn near hyperventilating in my anger. Now it's go time, do or die, no more fucking around, no more Mr. Nice Guy. I see my cigarette smoldering on the rooftop beside us. I pick it up and hold the cherry a finger's breadth from his eye. My face pinches up. I shake the thing in his face and take one last drag to get it good and hot before putting it out right in the center of the deep purple bruise spreading over his ribs, then pull my respirator back into place. He screams and sobs, and I pop him in the mouth again with a right jab. His sobs are muffled when he closes his mouth and rubs his jaw with his still free hands. I grab his right wrist and force him over onto his stomach. I drag his arm to his lower back and wrap it in a zip tie. He resists, fighting against the pain to try and pull his arm free. I punch him in the back of the head until he stops struggling, then force his other arm back and finish cuffing him, then roll him onto his back again. I straddle his stomach and lean close enough that the oil from his nose smudges my visor. "Where are they?" I ask. "Those fucks you sent away. Where'd you send them?" He tries to recoil, but just slams the back of his head onto the rooftop. I grab him under the arms and heave him up onto the parapet. He thrashes about, trying to balance himself on the narrow railing. My hands under his arms are all that stop him from falling. "Where?" I demand. I'm lost completely to the rage surging through my veins. My breathing turns ragged and harsh. Stopping myself from burying my knife in his stomach and pushing him over the edge takes all my focus. He crushes his eyelids shut. His head rolls from side to side, and he moans. "Plague take you! Let me go!" he cries. "Let you go? You want me to let you go?" I growl. He seems to have realized what he said and tries to stammer out a reply, but it's too late. I release him. He twists as he overbalances and begins to slip over the edge, but I grasp the back of his neck and pull him back up just as he's about to drop. "Tell me where they went," I say. He sucks in big gulps of air, half choking on the toxic haze, but the stubborn fuck shakes his head violently. I shift his weight further and further over the edge and repeat again and again, "Tell me, tell me." He thrashes against me, but injured and freezing as he is, he lacks the strength to do anything about it. 5 floors is a long way to fall, Scavver, but not that long, I say coldly, matter-of-factly. A tough guy like you might even survive hitting the ground, but you're not going to just walk away from it, at least not on your legs. I pause and watch him, lowering myself so we are eye to eye. I wonder how long it'd take for the rot dogs to find you. "No, big brother, please," he sobs, shaking his head, snot and saliva slicking his mouth and chin. I yank him back upright and touch my forehead to his, both hands wrapped around the back of his neck, and say, "This is about to get a fuck-ton worse for you, little brother. Tell me." He babbles incoherently to himself. I lean him back out over the open air, further this time. "Give it up. Where are your friends?" I shout. He continues his incoherent, terror-filled ranting. "There's nothing you can do. No choice left but to talk or fall," I say. "You're fucked. The only question left for you is to what degree?" His nostrils flare, he squeezes his eyes shut, his mouth falls open, and a defeated howl bursts out. "Make it easier for yourself," I say. "Are you going to spend a few years doing hard labor? Maybe a little reprogramming?" I ask. "Or are you going to crack your spine on the pavement and wait for the rot dogs to come peel the living meat from your bones?" His eyes, wide and staring, glow orange under the lamp. "Or maybe PubSec is going to have to come out and figure you out," I finish. His eyes shine and wetness streaks through the filth coating his cheeks. "Come on, Scavver, I'm trying to save your stupid ass here. Talk and save yourself. Don't talk and wish you had till your spark finally flees your filthy, diseased body." For a moment, it almost seems like he's going to talk. He looks at me with wet eyes, mouth open and quivering. Then his face pinches back into the old sneer I've come to know so well. "Furk ya," he growls. "Furk your help. Furk your blighted union, Nercapper." He blinks away the tears and stares hard into my face. Destiny will rise up again. And when she does... He shakes his head slightly and spits at me. The wind chuffs through the ruined scaffolding and broken windows of the sanitation facility to catch and carry away the disgusting wad of disease. I shake my head and release my grip on his wrists. He yelps and slips off the railing. His plummet to the workyard below is cut short by the zip ties anchoring him to the parapet. There's a thick, wet pop, and he belts out a shriek of pure agony. One of his feet is pointing the wrong way now. His swings to a stop and frantic and incomprehensible shouts echo through the sanitation facility yard. But at last, he breaks. All right, I'll tell you," he cries, looking pitifully up at me, then over his shoulder to the ground below, where his gear lays in dusty heaps flapping in the wind. "Just please, don't let me fall." The wind wails with joy, clawing at him with greedy fingers. "There, big brother, the others went there," the scavver shouts desperately through sobs of pain and terror. He gestures with his chin to the outlines of a group of residential towers in a compound barely visible through the haze across an industrial runoff canal just north of the sanitation facility's workyard. "The Torwers," he cries, "other soit Oda Canal." He slips so far into that wasteland dialect of his that I almost don't catch his meaning till I follow his gesture to the gated compound on the north side of the runoff canal. They stand there, a dozen or so residential towers looming over the landscape like sentinels frozen in place and obfuscated by the raging dust storms. They rise so high into the haze that the tops are all but invisible, all but the nearest ones. The tower at the southeasternmost corner of the compound is sheared off just above what looks like the 20th floor or so. leaving nothing but twisted, skeletal steel clawing at the clouds like hooked, crooked fingers. "See? That wasn't so hard, was it?" I ask. "Now, how do I get across the canal?" His face flutters between defiance and compliance until he lets out a long, throaty wail. "Not across, big brother, under," he says. "Thar's a way under de canal through d'incinerators," he says. His words are smothered in snot and saliva. "No bridges, Lurf, no way across. You're going to go under." His sobs break the sentence up. My temper cools to polished ice and my tool knife clicks into the open position. The scavver flinches hard at the sound. The aggression regulators begin to spin down, back into sleep mode, and a migraine begins to take root. "Incinerators?" I ask, tapping the sole of his foot with the knife. I trace the tip of the blade along the bottom of his bare feet. He shivers, and a paper-thin slit appears just behind his big toe. I put the knife to one of the zip ties binding his ankles to the railing and give it a little flick. It pops open and falls, bouncing off the bottom of his chin before the wind snatches it up and carries it off. "Maintenance harches in the incinerators, into the underworks, down the stairs and through the tunnels." He shudders just a little when he says that last part. "Then into a tower basements," the scavver says, his voice a stammering mess of his wasteland dialect made thick with apprehension. "All right, I believe you. That's why I'm not going to cut these ties." I tap the narrowing bundle of plastic ties with the knife's edge. One of them pops open and tumbles to the ground below. "Oops." He gibbers incoherently to himself in that guttural wasteland snarl. I trace the outline of a design tattooed on the ball of the man's left foot. It's a rocket ship that forms the pupil and iris of a woman's eye. It has an unsettling quality to it, something inhuman, reptilian. It seems to follow me as I shift back and forth on my haunches. The crude drawing and uneven lines give it the look of a prison tattoo done with a ball pen. "It's not the first time I've seen this. Seems every time I run into one of your people, they've all got this," I say. I jam the tip of the knife into the center of the pupil, and he shrieks. "Tell me about the tat," I say. I open and close the knife over and over again and repeat the demand. The scavver flinches with each click of the blade's liner lock. He pants hard and tears stream from his eyes. His face is contorted with frustration and pain. The struggle going on in his mind visibly intensifies, twisting his features further. At length he gives in. "Destiny warches," he says. "She always warches. Warches our airy step." "What the fuck is that? Some scavver superstition?" I ask. A cracked screen embedded in his arm lights up like the advertisements in NorCap. It glitches and flickers as it works. "The fuck?" I ask. "I thought that fucking thing broke when I hit you and your boys downstairs. Shoulda checked." I reach down and twist him to see the screen. A message notification icon pulses there, followed by another, then a third. Soon there are 10 or so icons stacked, all pulsating impatiently. "The fuck is this all about?" I ask. A box with a bright green sent notification pulsing inside it appears, then slowly fades away. "What the fuck was that all about?" I demand. "Who the fuck did you just message?" His bloody grin splits his face in two. His eyes slide shut, he sucks in a deep breath, and the screen pops back on with another message sent notification. "She's been listening and she likes you. Wants to know more about you." Triumph inexplicably fills his voice. "Your test's just beginning, Carper. See how far you get." He cackles and I drop my rucksack to pull out my tracker gun. To him, it would probably look like a pistol, but instead of a slide and barrel, it has a thick needle protruding from the end of a clear plastic cylinder attached to a revolving chamber full of dozens of Beidou trackers the size of a grain of rice. I pull back the charging handle and jam the needle into the bottom of his foot. A spring-loaded plunger launches a tracker tag in. He moans with pain. "Suck it up, little brother," I say. "PubSec will be out soon to collect you." He shudders and closes his eyes, sucking in a choked breath and letting it out slowly, just like he did a moment ago. "Oh, no you don't, you little fuck. Should have taken care of that long ago," I shout, unfolding my tool knife, hurling myself halfway over the parapet, and driving the knife through the center of the screen, embedded in the back of his left forearm. The blade, about the length of my middle finger, buries itself up to the pivot and comes out the underside of his wrist. He falls into body-racking convulsions. His face goes slack, his eyes roll up into their sockets, and vomit erupts from his mouth. The wind snatches it up and spreads it across the workyard below. He lurches from side to side, twisting erratically. He swings back and forth like a pendulum dropped with too much force. I yank the blade from his arm, and the screen goes black. A gout of fire bursts from the implant, but it doesn't catch a light. Oily, black smoke bellows out of the wound, and bright red blood spurts out of the slender hole onto the underside of his chin. The wind gusts again, snatching up loose droplets of blood and carrying them off. I watch in disbelief for several minutes before leaving through the roof's access shed to return to the barracks where I'd first encountered his crew. Cries of, "She's Gorn, you took her away from me," rise from the other side of the parapet. Before I go, I rip the crudely stitched Rec Ops patch from the shoulder of his coat, then the shadows inside the shed swallow me up. Nearly incomprehensible pleas for mercy, slurred at first but growing in volume and clarity, drift after me. They're quickly swallowed up by the labyrinthine corridors leading back to the lower levels of the sanitation facility as I make my way back down. I stop and listen before the scavver's voice fades entirely. I thought it was me the scavver was begging mercy from. Seemed to be directed at me, but as the sounds fade, the realization hits me. It's not me he's begging. The word destiny emerges repeatedly from the growls and snarls. I heave a sigh, grateful that this nightmare is finally over, and descend into the bowels of the building, back to the scavver's barracks. Back down to find the missing couple, dreaming below with the others.